Om Nama Pranavarthaya Shuddha Jnanaikamurtaye Nirmalaya Prashantaya Dakshina Murthaye Namaha. My most humble pranams to my very beloved Bhagawan Sri Sathya Sai Baba. Dear brothers and sisters, first of all, I'd like to thank each and every one of you for giving me this opportunity to have satsang with all of you, and especially Sister Anu, the IT team, Neelam, who gave me an alternative to shaving off my beard since my microphone was scratching noises from my beard. But I'm grateful to your team, the regional officers of this wonderful Region 3 of the Sathya Sai International Organization of the USA. Brother Vijay, I cannot stop thanking you for your kind words. And I remembered, Golda Meir from Israel made this comment once when she was very upset with someone. And she said, don't be humble. You're not that great. So I really want to thank you, brother. And you brought back so many memories, very sweet memories, being pushed out of seating is also a sweet memory. I have even been pushed out of the ashram. One evening I was just outside Purnachandra Hall. It was late in the evening and my eyes were closed and I was just thinking of Swami, and this hand grabs me from the back and drags me out. I couldn't even see who it was initially, but a very powerful hand. And this guy was speaking in Hindi. It was this gentleman who rings the bell during Aarti. And he took me right to the gate and threw me out. And it was close to 9 o'clock and 9 p.m. And then he told the security guys to not let me in. And the gate closed. And I'm outside. My room is inside, and I'm pleading to the security guys, please let me in. All of my IDs are inside. Even if I want to stay outside in a hotel, I can't do that because my wallet is inside. Please let me in. And, they let me sweat it out a little bit and then allowed me to come in. So being prevented there's some interesting experience. There was another time, I think, Nilesh would remember, in 2005 when we had a medical conference and we had written a beautiful book on Sai Ideal Healthcare, and I had done the work, the Adobe work on it, and the book was all ready, and Dr. Reddy was going to present it to Swami, and I wanted to watch that, and so I came in for the darshan and got kicked out. So, and the fellow, of course, kicked me not just out of the veranda, but he could kick me right out of the Kulwant Hall. And so I didn't know what to do. Initially, I just went back to one of the end buildings where Nilesh was printing out some documents. And I sat with him lamenting that I won't get Swami's darshan, when in about a few minutes, somebody announced Swami is driving by that north building. So we all ran out and had a nice darshan of Swami. And then I thought, hey, why don't I go to Kulwant Hall and, try to come walking in, along the sides. And of course, I wasn't allowed inside, but along the sides. And there is this little fence thing on top of the wall. And I was standing behind that looking at Swami, and Dr. Reddy had offered this book to Swami, which was the most beautiful thing. I saw Swami looking at it page after page. So vicariously or in some way, I enjoyed the darshan and Swami looking at the book. So there are a lot of these experiences. It's really funny that Brother Vijay reminded me of it, and of Swami suddenly appearing. This has happened to me on 2 occasions when I was similarly with my eyes. The very first time I saw Swami was with my mother in Whitefield, and she was on the ladies' side, I was on the gents' side. And obviously, my eyes were closed and I was just lost in thinking about Swami. And, I could feel this thing touching my nose. And, I did this and opened my eyes and it was Swami. And his robe was that close to me and he was standing right there. It was such a beautiful, beautiful fragrance and vision of Swami. I can never forget that. But another occasion when my father had passed away in 2006, and I had gone, my father passed away in Guru Purnima, and I went there just in time for the Atirudra Mahayagnam. And I was sitting, my father was diabetic, and he loved this Indian thing called Parle's glucose biscuit. And he just wanted that. And he would tell me each time he saw me say, can you give me that? And, ridiculous as I am, unnecessarily, I would try to protect him. He has diabetes, he's had a stroke, and I would say, no, Appa, please, not this. And I felt guilty even giving that. So I would not give it to him. And of course, it's silly. And when he passed away, I really regretted it. And when we put his ashes in the ocean, at that time I threw a whole bunch of Parle glucose biscuits in the ocean. But anyway, so I went to Prashanti, and Atirudra Mahayagnam was going on, and soon after that, I first went to Swami, and I was sitting there. Swami came and he called me, and I ran up to him. And I just had tears, and I cried, and I said, Swami, Appa, my father merged with you, I think, I said. And then all he said was, he asked me, when is your mother coming? So I told him she was coming 3 days later. And he said, go sit down. And I felt terrible that, I'm pouring my heart out to him. And he just said, go sit down. So after 3 days, when my mother and sister arrived, I was sitting in darshan with my eyes closed, and again, bhajans were going on. And it was beautiful for me with the bhajans. And my father had just passed away. I was thinking of Swami. And then suddenly, something hits me and falls on my lap. And I look at my lap. I mean, in front of me is Swami. He's standing there just like before. Swami standing there, smiling. And then he said like this, asking me to look at my lap. Then I looked at my lap, and there was a beautiful Parle glucose biscuit package in my lap. And I obviously had tears at that time. The funny thing is, after all the darshan was over, bhajans were over, so then I was coming out to tell the story to my mother and sister, and they were coming out yelling at me because the same thing had happened to them. And there was this Parle glucose biscuit thrown at them as well. But it was very, very sweet, the sudden Swami coming when you're lost in thoughts. So happy and holy Shivaratri, Mahashivaratri to all of you. As you know, Shivaratri is a monthly event. It's in the tail end of the half of the month when the moon is waning. And at the end of that waning period is Shivaratri every month. But once a year in the month of Magha, which is January, February, you have Mahashivaratri. And the idea is that every day of that waning moon, we think about our Lord Sai Shiva and give up one aspect of our mind in those 14 days. And in the 14th day, you see a sliver of moon, And that's the last vestige of your attachment or your misconception of who you are, and you give that up. And you have just stillness, because at that point, your mind simply does not matter. It's not existing for you anymore. That's the idea of Maha Shivaratri. So on that day, you pray, you sing bhajans, you think of Lord Shiva, and think of those parts of you that are wedded to the idea that you are this body and you are this mind, both of which you are not. And Swami says that during this Shivaratri, during the whole day and night, that should be a thought. As the last sliver of moon disappears, so should your mind. And we keep trying. Every year of our lives is granted to us for one purpose, to kill the mind. And every year that we are alive, I am grateful to God for giving me this opportunity to keep reminding myself, I am not this body, I'm not this mind. While it is easy to say, I am Brahman, I am Brahman, I am Brahman, which is the truth, it is easier for me to say, I am not this body, I am not this mind, because I've experienced this body, I've experienced this mind, and to reject that which I've experienced is easier than to reject that which I have not experienced. But it is the truth that the Brahman is what we are. And the beauty about Lord Sai Shiva is that Shiva is verily the divine form. It's very funny that I'm saying form, because it is truly formless, without any attributes or form, and yet I'm saying it's a divine form. But when we say Shiva, there is really nothing that we should be imagining to be Shiva, because that is the antithesis of who Shiva is. And so what Swami has taught us in Sutravahini is that this beauty of who we are, which is the same as who all of you are, all of this universe is, that beauty is what we should seek, because everything else that tells us who we are is not who we are. And this Shivaratri, Maha Shivaratri, is the occasion when we have time to think about these things. The initial stotram that I sang is an ode to this basic thought that you are Brahman. So it begins with Om Namah Pranavaya. Om, that sound Om, also referred to as Pranava, as Udgita in the Chandogya Upanishad from at the end of Samaveda. That Om is extremely powerful. It's the sound form of the divine, because we need some connection. How do we connect with the divine? The only tools we have is this, our motor and sensory organs. And so our connection with the divine has to come from that, because that's all the frame of reference that our mind understands. And so this Om is the sound form of God. The lingam is supposed to be the visual form of God without any attributes. There are no limbs coming out of a lingam, it's just smooth. And so the Om, Nama Pranava, I bow down to this primordial sound, the sound that is associated with the one universe. Om Nama Pranavaya. Shuddha Jnanaika Murtaye. And there are two ways to look at it. Shuddha is pure. Jnana Eka, that means the one knowledge. That is the Advaita. So Shiva, Lord Shiva, is the essence, the epitome of that Advaita. Shuddha Jnana, pure knowledge. Shuddha Jnanaika Murtaye. Nirmalaya Prashantaya, peaceful, stillness. And as Brother Vijay mentioned, be still, that is Psalm 46. Be still and know that I am God. This people attribute it to various sources, but one commonly perceived source is the Korah, who was son, I think, grandson of Levi, son or grandson of Levi, but descendant of that, who wrote this. And there are various versions of this. There is a version of this that essentially says that you don't have to do anything that you believe is surrendered to God. Then you just stay there, be still, and know that I am God. Nirmalaya is stillness, prashantaya. And in fact, Martin Luther actually had a beautiful poem based on this concept of stillness, where divinity lives or exists, that in this, he called it Festeburg. That means a very strong fort. Das ist unser Gott. That means that is our God. Our God is so strong, like a fortress, that once you're inside, nothing touches you. No storm, no water, no fires, and you're safe over there. Be still and know that I am God. But this statement, be still and know that I'm God, can come from various sources. For example, I can be standing here and I can imagine that Murthy in front of me, an idol in a temple, is telling me, be still and know that I am God. Or it could be that my soul, my Atma, is telling this mind, hey, you, be still and know that I, the true I, the Atma, that I am God. And so how we perceive the statement can vary. And that is the beauty of Shiva. One can worship Lord Shiva in a relationship of body to body, or mind to body, or form to form. And so I can make a pilgrimage of the Panchabhuta temples, which I did all except one, the Panchabhuta temples in South India, where there is a Shivalingam for each of the 5 elements of nature, very auspicious temples, and I visited them. And you go there and sit and pray, and that's a form to form relationship. And I go there and imagine that the other form is telling me, be still and know that I am God. So it's a form, it's a relationship with Lord Shiva, this body and mind has with the temple. And Swami has said this beautifully in a May 1970 discourse, where he says that you can worship a picture as God, but do not think that God is the picture or stone. The same, it's a couple of sentences he said in that discourse. The second sentence is about stone. He says you can worship stone as God, but do not think that God is stone. So when you go and believe that Shiva is that stone, that you have to be very careful about how you portray God or how you imagine God. So that relationship of form to form can be one type of relationship with Lord Sai Shiva. And we can rejoice in that, where we, like Radha with Krishna, or Meera is another example, where we are so absorbed in the beauty and grace to the exclusion of everything else around us. Our focus is on that one which we call as God, and we worship that idol, or we see the God inside that idol. It's the God that we worship. But that is the relationship. It's a form-to-form relationship which can be there for Lord Shiva. The other relationship can be one in which we have a relationship between this form and something which is formless. That is, to some extent, my mind realizes that this body and mind is not the reality. That is not who I am. And that there is an indweller. And it is the indweller that truly represents the divine. And so then there is a relationship between this form to a formless. And the formless is that indweller. And the classic example of that, and a beautiful analogy, is given in the Kathopanishad, where there's this famous story of a young lad called Nachiketa. I won't go into that story, but eventually Nachiketa gets these lessons from Lord Yama and the god of death. But one of the important analogies in that conversation is, imagine a chariot with many horses. There's a charioteer holding reins, and there's a passenger. The passenger is Atma, is Brahman, is the one that is the indweller. The chariot is the body. The charioteer is the intelligence or buddhi, and the reins is the mind. And the horses are the senses. And so it is important in this context for the mind to be controlled by the intelligence. And only then will your senses be able to pursue and take this body in the path of this destination to God. If, on the other hand, your intelligence gives up and says, I should not be doing this, but it's okay, and then the mind, and then loosens the reins, and the mind goes berserk and does what it wants to, and the senses go hither and thither, and the horse carriage is either falls off or goes in the wrong direction, and the passenger is wasting his time, his or her time. So that analogy tells you that there is indeed a relationship between our body and mind versus the passenger, the true indweller. And this relationship with Shiva is unique, because not only can we have a form to form relationship with Shiva, we can also have a form to formless, the passenger, form to formless relationship with Shiva. And then, of course, finally, we can have a relationship with Shiva, formless to formless. And when I say we, in that case, has to be only that pronoun is only for the indweller. And whether you say we or I is irrelevant for the indweller. That to Brahman. And that relationship is all that matters, formless to formless. So eventually that's where we want to go. So we go from form to form, and then form to formless, and then formless to formless. And in each of these, Lord Shiva gives us the beautiful vision and lessons in life, if that is what we want. All we have to do is to pray. Shiva, we say he's Bholenath, that means very generous in giving boons. And all we have to say is, show me this path, help me. Because we're asking for his help, he will help. And the beauty is that those lessons that he teaches are amazing. That Lord Sai Shiva is truly Shiva, and I have no doubt about that. And this Lord Sai Shiva is always with us in our chariot. And he is truly, I'm going to take a pause here after one couple of words I'll say. He is truly, as long as this body is here, as long as this universe exists, this mind exists, that passenger in the chariot is truly our eternal companion. And I want to sort of take this moment to share with you, and I'm sure most of you would have received, if you haven't received, this beautiful magazine that was released last night around 2 a.m. in California time. And this is a beautiful magazine called The Eternal Companion. So that there it is on your screen. And all of you can go to our website, to satyasai.org. On the home page itself, you will see a link to the home page, to the landing page of this periodical. And you can download the English version, and we're soon going to have other languages as well. And this is a monthly magazine. So it's really beautiful. So you can go through this. Here's a glimpse of the table of contents. And you have some discourses from Swami, experiences of devotees, beautiful letters that Swami has written with his own handwriting, and several articles by devotees. And so it's a beautiful, beautiful magazine. And this is the inaugural issue. And I encourage all of you to go to our website. From the homepage, you can navigate easily to download this. So coming back to our thing. So this chariot, in which Swami is sitting, the formless to formless, if you think of that relationship, then all we need to do to get to that relationship, Swami tells us in a 1996 July discourse. And he says, just two words he said. You want to go there? Then follow me. That's what he said, follow me. All we have to do is to listen to Swami, follow him, listen to his words. And his words are more than just poetry. It's more than scriptures. It's more than a command. It is your only path to salvation. Those words, they may come in. Scriptures have them too. Several scriptures, several avatars have told us these things. And each of them have shown us the path to go to God. But here we have an avatar who was there standing in the midst of us. He saw us and he knew what our problems were, what our weaknesses were. And he would tell us, like a doctor who prescribes for each patient a different medication, he would prescribe to you something else, and something else. And he knew exactly what to do. And we've had that kind of interaction with an avatar. It's unprecedented. None of the people who lived at the time of Jesus are alive now. And we are alive today, all of us who were there when Swami was there. That beauty, that relationship with Swami is very unique. It is one-on-one. It goes beyond the shackles, the impediments, the illusions, the fata morgana of this world, of this universe, which really doesn't exist. Because think about this. What we see, what we hear, what we smell, what we taste, what our senses tells us about this universe is all because there is something that interprets these inputs of the various senses. And that's our mind. As long as the mind is there, we believe the inputs of the senses, and then we manufacture out of that something that we call as truth, which is not the truth. It is manufactured. So, but remember, when you die, your mind is gone. There is something in your body that has left. And when that has left, when that entity has left, your body stops physiologically, it stops functioning. There are no more pumps or, there are no more physiological mechanisms that are taking place in your body. It just withers and the body is gone. Dust to dust, as they say. But, and there's no mind. When that indweller leaves the body is gone and there is no mind. But when the indweller comes in, suddenly the body starts working, the heart starts beating. I mean, the embryology of the human form is incredible. It's truly the, like they say, first daughter, first wife, etc. This is the first miracle. The miracle of all miracles is this, because it is only from this that all other miracles can be seen. Only when the body is constructed and the mind is there can you appreciate the other miracles of God. But this is the first miracle, the formation of the human being. And that happens because this entity, the indweller, entered that body or those cells that were forming. So when that comes in, the mind is created. And the very first job the mind does is to deny the existence of that which created it. And says that, no, all of these other things are the reality, not this indweller. And the indweller waits patiently. That Shiva waits and waits and waits for the mind to decide and learn that indeed it is the indweller that is the cause of everything, not the mind. And this again, Swami says it so beautifully in that discourse of 1996, July, where he says that there is a curtain, and on one side of the curtain is our world, with the phenomenal things happening. By phenomenal, I don't mean fantastic things subject to phenomena. That's happening on one side. on the other side is the divine. And Swami says, on that side of the curtain is the divine. This side of the curtain is our body and our mind. And our mind thinks that everything that happens on this side of the curtain is because of this body and this mind. But that is not the case. Everything that happens in this side of the curtain comes only from that side of the curtain. And it is that is the Brahman, the one. Shuddha Jnana Aika Jnana Eka Murti. That one, that knowledge of that one is all we need and all that exists. And that which motivates, which animates what happens on this side of the curtain should not be misconstrued as if this body and this mind is the cause of all the effects that we see. The beauty of Dakshina Murthy is that, this is actually a very nice story, and I like the story particularly because of the type of teaching that Dakshina Murthy exemplifies. So that's a form of Shiva. It's another form of Shiva, Dakshina Murthy. And the story about Dakshina Murthy is, Dakshina, as you know, is south. So south facing is Dakshina Murthy. The four sons of Brahma had, they were very proud of their knowledge of spirituality, and they were proud that their father had created the three Vedas. At that time, there were only three Vedas: the Rig Veda, Yajur Veda, Sama Veda. And so, they sat under a tree and they were meditating, trying to ask for a guru who would tell them more about what this life is all about. And they started walking and they came to a banyan tree, and there was this mendicant sitting there. This was Lord Shiva. So, and this was the time when Shiva, if you recall, was, a disaster happened with his marriage with Sati. Sati is Parvati version 1.0. And so that, after that disaster, Shiva sat and he was deep in contemplation when these four guys approached. And then they prayed for knowledge, and Shiva, as a person, as a divine entity that always grants boons, said, okay, I'll grant you this boon. This transfer of knowledge from Shiva to these guys, the beauty of this is a term that I use, and that is silent eloquence. There is a beauty in silence, how things can be transferred, how thoughts can be transferred, how you can teach. The next best step is what we do in medicine, which is teaching by doing. But this is not even doing, it is silent eloquence, where through his silence, he was able to transmit those thoughts to the four children of Brahma. So while this was going on, there is another rishi who walks in to this little congregation, and his name is Atharva Rishi, and he says, he brings with him this big book, and he comes to Shiva and he says, bows in front of him, and he says that I'd like you to read this and tell me if it adds to the existing pool of knowledge, which is all there in the three Vedas that these guys have, that Brahma has compiled. And so Shiva looks at it and then says, yes, of course, this is beautiful. This is adding more. And what Atharva says is he got this just, from the universe, knowledge poured into him, and he jotted it down, and that's his knowledge. And so those four guys were obviously enraged, and they said, how can this mendicant adjudicate this process of giving dignity to this book brought by another rishi? We don't even know who he is. And so then Shiva says, well, then in that case, we need to have a debate about this, and a discussion about what this book can give. And let's see you versus this Rishi Atharva versus me. Let us see what happens. So they have this debate, and eventually, of course, the four children of Brahma admit that the knowledge in that Rishi Atharva brought supersedes what was contained in those three Vedas. And that's where we have Atharva Veda that was added by Dakshina Murthy. The reason Dakshina Murthy is there at that time was during the debate. The tradition is for the more knowledgeable person to sit on the north, to sit on the south side, facing north. But these four guys, impetuous as they were, said there is no way, Lord Shiva, you are not, they say you're Lord Shiva, but to us you're like a beggar. And I don't even know why you're the person. I know King Daksha has said that you should be the one making this decision in this debate. So, okay, but don't sit here. Go sit on the other side. So Shiva sat on the north side facing south, and he's facing these people there. So that is Dakshina Murthy. And the silent eloquence is the characteristic of Dakshina Murthy. If you recall Ramana Maharishi's practice of spreading the knowledge that he had gained was also through silence. So the beauty of Lord Shiva and Dakshina Murthy is this knowledge that we can get through silence. And again, we come back to be still and know that I am God. There is so much beauty in that. There is so much beauty in being stillness. And stillness comes from, Dr. Reddy says about this, but, in Hindi, I'll say it in English, but in Hindi it is, the teacher is there and the students are all, moving around, they're restless. And he says, okay, be still. Hilo mat, that means don't move around, don't shake. So then they all become silent. But then they're talking. Then the teacher says, chup, bolo mat, means don't talk. So there's silence of speech, right? There's silence of body, there's silence of speech. And then the teacher says, socho mat, that means do not think. That is silence of the mind, which is the most difficult part. And it is in this silence that we realize the beauty of God. And I often find, and what Swami tells even in Sutra Vahini is, the more there is our mind, the less there is our realization of God. Because the mind's job is two things. One is to negate the existence of this indweller, but at the same time, it is the mind that we need to understand and experience the indweller. And the experience comes from faith. Swami says, Soham, 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 keep saying, I'm God, I'm God, I'm God, I'm Brahman, I'm Brahman, I'm Brahman. And in fact, there is this famous story of Shvetaketu, where, Tattvamasi, that Mahavakya is said 9 times. We look at the stars, look at this universe, see all these things. That indeed is you, Shvetaketu, Tattvamasi. Again, the father will go take, show some more things of nature and say, Shvetaketu, Tattvamasi. That is indeed you. That is that is you. Tattvamasi is so important that to impart that, one has to keep reminding ourselves that Brahman is me, but we have not experienced it. Yet we are supposed to say that. Swami says, keep saying you're Brahman, you're Brahman. But how do I say that, Swami? I have not experienced it. And then Swami says, okay, then negate what you have experienced. You have experienced body, say, I'm not the body. That's easier to say because I know what the body is. I know what the eyes are. I know what the ears are. So I can say, I'm not the ears, I'm not the eyes. And I'm not the mind. I've got to keep saying that because these are things we have experienced. By denying those that we have experienced, we come closer to experiencing those that we have denied so far. And that is Brahman. And that's the beauty of this path that Swami has given us. Lord Sai Shiva tells us that the path to Shiva comes from realizing. And who is realizing? It is the mind. So the mind is being used to still the mind. That is the beauty of this path. And the stillness that is portrayed, exemplified by Dakshina Murthy, is the stillness where we see and experience the true God, the true Lord Sai inside us. So I will stop here, but on this occasion, the younger adults always tell me, don't say but, and say and instead. And on this beautiful occasion of Maha Shivaratri, I pray for peace, world peace, inner peace, peace among all of us in this universe. Samasta Lokha Sukhino Bhavantu. Jai Sai Ram.